What we're going to move to now is a very interesting question which was pointed up by Hannah Weisfeld in her opening remarks about this assumption that somehow security and peace are opposing categories, that they are in conflict with each other, and that they're seen as mutually exclusive. And so we're going to put this question to our four panelists now, which is why are security and peace treated as or considered mutually exclusive? And perhaps try and dig down deeper into what's going on almost in the public conversation, the media, and even the psychology of the country in seeing these two things as opposing categories. Let me say just a word or two about our speakers who have arrived here without yet me having a chance to say hello to them properly. And a couple of them I haven't yet met, so we're going to have an interesting situation of me guessing who is who. I know that we have two here who I know exactly, and I will say something about them. We have on my left Haaretz's political correspondent Barak Ravid. To his left, filmmaker, writer and founder member, I think, of Women Wage Peace, a feminist peace movement, Anat Saragusti. On my right, one of these two gentlemen is going to be Gadi Zohar, Brigadier General of the Council of Peace and Security. I was going to guess that, but didn't want to take anything for granted. And Ashraf Al-Ajrami, who is a former Minister for Prisoner Affairs in the Palestinian National Authority, and thank you for completing our panel. You've heard the rules, I'm afraid, about time, and in the conflict itself, as we heard from Danny Sideman, time is running out. So it is here at this panel as well. So why don't we take this straight away? And Anat Saragusti, why don't you just kick us off with this question? And I'm even going to have to shrink down the time available. But to why, first of all, why it is you think peace and security are seen as opposing categories, and how you see it.
First, I want to ask who's got to define what security is. I mean, usually in Israel, the ones who define what security is a very narrow sector, which are, excuse me, Gadi, the generals in the army. They define what security is, and usually they speak about state security. They don't speak about individual security or personal security. So this colors the whole debate or the whole discussion on what security is. So when you speak about, the contradiction between peace and security, since people in Israel mostly lost the vision and lost the ability to dream what peace means, when you ask an average Israeli what peace means, they will automatically say security. So there isn't a contradiction, there is a linkage, a direct linkage between security and peace, because people lost the ability to envision peace. Now, what I want to claim is that since the generals are the only one who has either the power or the ability or have given the key to define what security means, many sectors are excluded from this debate. And the main sector that is excluded from this debate are the women, of course, since we are 51 to 52% of the population, and we are not part of this debate. We are not part of the debate not only in the media, and there are very, very few like war correspondents or military correspondents in the Israeli media. We are not to define this even in the decision-making processes, because there are very few women who sit in this, security cabinets within the government who's got to have a voice on what security means and what the alternative, or to put the alternative on the table. So this is why, there is a continuity on how security is defined and how security is treated, and what are the solutions to how to deal with the security threats. And this is mainly based on fear. And it's fear that we are not allowed to talk about, but we are allowed to feel it, So my claim is that if we broaden a little bit the definition of security, and if we try to speak about personal security or individual security, because wars are not somewhere, or the military campaigns are not somewhere in the front. There is no front anymore. I mean, the front is in our backyard or even front yard. And the civilians are not part of this definition. The civilians are not part of the solutions. So the broader we get with the definition, the broader we get with the discussion and the debate, and the broader we get with the ideas and alternative ideas, I think we'll reach solutions easier. I mean, it's not easy. Any solution there is no easy solution to this situation, but still, we will maybe put on the table alternatives that now are dismissed very easily by the generals because it doesn't involve any F-35 planes or tanks or brigades or whatever. So we should broaden a little bit this dichotomy between peace and security and say, well, something has got to change. Something in the debate has got to change. We don't have to dismiss all these ideas as being naive or very marginal and not serious if it doesn't include, an ex-general saying that. We don't need the ex-general to say that. I mean, we have a voice. We women have voices. I'm part of the Women Wage Peace movement, which is a rapidly growing, it's not a peace movement, it's a feminist movement that it was established after the military campaign over Gaza last summer in 2014. Women say no more war. We don't want another war. It's enough. And we want a solution. We don't present on the table a definite solution. We don't say what the solution should be because really it doesn't matter. As long as it's an agreement that is agreed upon between the parties, I really don't care what kind of a solution it is. I don't care what kind of an agreement it is, as long as it is agreed upon. And I think it's a new approach, because everybody say, well, it's a two-state, it's a one-state, it's one state with two peoples, it's one people with two states, etc., etc. And we say we want an agreement. Thank you.
Oh, I was giving you another minute. Thank you for that. Sparing
I come from television. I know what
yes,
time limit
very
is.
Very good. No, and I absolutely right. And this is not personal about Gadi, who's obviously here, but I'm very interested in your point about not needing generals, because previously that's always been the assumption that to make any kind of peace case, you need to reassure people that don't worry that you won't be jeopardizing security. How do you get over that almost psychological impulse in the Israeli electorate to feel the need that before taking a risk for peace, you need to be reassured on security?
Well, it's about the definition. If I feel secure going at night in the streets of Tel Aviv, it has nothing to do with tanks and brigades and F-35. And, if the majority of the budget of Israel goes, or 20%, almost 20% of the budget of Israel goes to state security, how do I benefit from that? So I think the civic voice, and I think NIF is really trying to do that, to integrate the civilians into the debate. I mean, I think this is the key.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed. This will be a different perspective, but Ashraf, Al-Ajrami, also long career in the media and in journalism, just like Anat. How do you see this question of security and peace and the relationship between the two of them?
Thank you. Good morning for everybody. I'm happy to be here. It is the first time for me to be in London also.
Welcome. Thank you. It's not always like this in London. Right? This is not a typical London crowd.
Normally better weather.
Now, when we, as Palestinians, speak about peace, we know the worries of the Israelis and the fears of the Israelis of peace. We also understand that Israel needs peace. But we see the opposite thing of what the Israelis do for the security. Because the Israeli government, the current prime minister, tried all the time to frighten the Israelis of the security situation, and on the ground, he did everything to unsecure the Israelis, unsecure the Israeli state. The Israeli government tried many things to have peace, the separating fence, the one-sided evacuating or withdrawal from Gaza Strip, and now they try to do other steps on the ground in East Jerusalem and other places. Peace is connected totally to security. You can't gain security without having a peaceful agreement. And I here want you to know that the only secured situation with Israel is with the Arab countries which Israel had a peaceful agreement with, like Egypt and Jordan. All the circumstances or the chaos in the region, the Israeli security was kept totally in a very good manner with the borders with Egypt and with the borders with Jordan. And this shows to us that if you want security, you must have peaceful agreement. This is the situation of the Palestinian authority, of the Palestinian leadership, or even the Palestinian people. And I want to also, I want you to know that there was almost full understanding between the Israeli leadership and the Palestinian leadership about peace arrangements. It was even in Taba talks, and after that with the Ehud Olmert government. It is not a matter of the Palestinian leadership or the Palestinian people deny the needs of security on the Israeli side. It is what the Israeli government does to have security, and I think there is no security without peace. And now if you are speaking about the places, the very problematic places in the West Bank and in Jerusalem, the places that there is friction between the Palestinians and the Israelis, in East Jerusalem and in the Hebron area. And because of settlers and because of situation and because of occupation, people did what they did. If we want to have peace, security, we must have peace. Before that, we must have arrangement. And I think the Arab Peace Initiative, the opportunity for Israel to have peace of all the Arab countries and to have security from the Arab countries and from the Islamic countries also, which adopted the Arab Peace Initiative. And this is the opportunity for Israel to be integrated in the region as a part of this region, not to think of Israel as a part of Europe or a part of the external world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Very interesting you raised the Arab Peace Initiative, and others I know in Israel have raised that recently. One question again, it's similar actually to the one I put to Aziz earlier, but often it's said that Israelis say we'd love to make peace, the trouble is the other side are too weak, Abbas is too weak to deliver peace. Could the Palestinian Authority or even Palestinian politics actually deliver a peace agreement? Are they strong enough on their own side?
Yes, this is the answer of this question. The Palestinian leadership, even Hamas movement and the Islamic Jihad, all the Palestinian factions signed an agreement in Cairo in 2005 that they accept the principle of having a peaceful agreement with Israel. And this peaceful agreement must be exposed to the Palestinian people by referendum or new elections. And if the majority of the Palestinian people accepts this agreement, all factions, including Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, will accept it. This is the first agreement. The second agreement, the Shati agreement between Fatah movement and Hamas movement, they agreed on the establishing a Palestinian state based on 1967 borders. And this is very a huge agreement or development, especially if we are speaking about the position of fundamentalist and extremist faction like Hamas movement. So if we have an agreement and the majority of the Palestinian people will accept it, I think it can pass, and all the Palestinian parties and factions will accept it.
Thank you. I'm getting that feeling, and I bet others in this room are getting that feeling. You often get in dialogues like this, which is everything you've heard the Israeli speakers say and everything you've heard the Palestinian speakers say means it's completely compatible. And actually, what's the problem? Why is this so difficult? What you've said and what Danny Seidman said before, why does this remain? If you can see the outlines and the terms of what this kind of agreement will be, more or less everyone agreeing, more or less, 67 borders, ending settlements, etc. So I'm going to be unfair and put a new question to you, Barak, Ravid, which besides the thing about peace and security and why they're seen as opposing, why does this thing remain so difficult, given what you've just been hearing from the previous 5 or 6 speakers? So from Haaretz, Barak, who I should have called the diplomatic correspondent rather than political correspondent, Barak Ravid.
First, Jonathan, I have to thanks for that question. And talking about security, I feel that there's a big threat on all of our security here in the room because it's really, really cold. So if there's any possibility to do something about it, we have to remember we're coming from the Middle East here. It's we're not accustomed to such temperatures. But to your question, it's very clear. I don't want to be the spoiler of this party here, but if you haven't noticed, the panelists on the stage and in this conference do not really represent opposing views on this issue. Okay, that's the understatement of the year. And there's a slight problem that on both sides you have two leaders, and if you can call it leaders, but let's use that term. You have two people. One of them is Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the other one is President Abbas. That they are a mirror image of each other, which means that, and this is why sometimes I don't understand why they can't be really good friends, because they're so much alike. Both of them basically only want to maintain the status quo. Both of them are not willing to move an inch to change the status quo. Both of them say that they want peace and two-state solution and all that jazz, but basically they're not. They want to do it only on their terms. And their terms alone. And when this is the case, there's not going to be any movement whatsoever as long as both of them are in power. And we can talk about, how close it is, and the parameters are clear to everybody, blah, blah, blah. But it's this thing is not going to happen in the near future, folks. I don't want to again be the spoiler, but this is the reality. In Israel, you have a government, which is the most right-wing government we had in our history, that is opposed to a two-state solution. Okay, it does not support two-state solution, and it needs to be clear to everybody. That this government is totally controlled by the settler lobby, either from within or from outside, and there is no scenario whatsoever that this government is going to do anything. Okay, not something, not small thing, not anything. Okay, to at least move towards the direction of two-state solution, ending the occupation, whatever you want to call it. On the other side, you have, on the Palestinian side, you have a totally dysfunctional political system, okay, with no legitimacy whatsoever to President Abbas, that his due date was, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, okay, with no, as you said, no elections, West Bank and Gaza, Hamas in Gaza and Fatah in the West Bank are totally separated in huge political crisis that persists since the election in 2005, with no solution in sight. For all of you who want the two-state solution or peace between Israel and Palestinians, first you need to make peace between Fatah and Hamas. That's, I think, that the biggest challenge today. And the situation on the ground right now is a situation of a third intifada. Okay, it's not of a peace process or negotiations or. I said a few. I think it was last week. I was speaking to the New Israel Fund board in Tel Aviv, and I said that in the current reality, there's not going to be any meaningful final status negotiations or any possibility of an agreement in the next 10 to 20 years. That's the reality. Okay, it's not. We can talk again and again about finding the right formulas and ideas, but it's futile. There's no point in doing that because the problem is a political problem, and it's a political problem in Israel. It's even an even bigger political problem in Palestine, and until this, and I know we're going to talk about it later in the day, but the political crisis in Palestine today is one of the main stumbling blocks at ending the occupation.
The division between Hamas and Fatah.
Not only the division, but Palestine used to be the most democratic place in the Arab world. Okay? The most democratic place in the Arab world today is, while the Arab world as a whole, in my opinion, again, strategically, not, looking at what's going on in every place right now, but strategically what has happened in the Arab world in the last few years was that the Arab world is moving more towards democratization, okay? Or more towards opening up of societies. And Palestine is moving in the other direction. Today, Palestine is a dictatorship, okay? And until we realize that, and we'll admit that, and we'll take the steps to deal with that situation, nothing's going to change. When you have when the person in control, if we can call it in control, but the person that sits in the Muqata, Mr. Abbas, is the head of the Palestinian Authority, the head of the PLO, the supreme commander of the Palestinian Security Forces. He's everything. Okay, and there's nothing under him. Okay, there's just a huge hole, like Mubarak, the Mubarak regime in Egypt or the Ben Ali regime in Tunisia. That's the same situation. And when this is the case, anybody really thinks that you can make any progress? And again, when you look back on the other side, in Israel, do you really think that we're going to get a two-state solution when the strongest party that determines everything that happens in the Israeli coalition is the settler party? Why, are we kidding ourselves? So as long as this situation persists, nothing's going to happen.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah. I want to get finishing as close to 11 o'clock as I can, because that is the plan. But I just want to hear your reaction, Ashraf, to this idea that today Palestine is a dictatorship. Just a focused answer on that from Barak, Ravid.
Yes, I know that there is a problem in the Palestinian Authority, and no one can deny that there is a problem with the Palestinian regime. With President Mahmoud Abbas, because of the lack of elections. We are speaking about legislative council and about the Palestinian president, that we must hold these elections every 4 years. But unfortunately, from 2005 for the President Mahmoud Abbas, and for 2006 from the council, there weren't elections in the Palestinian Authority. But I think it is not an obstacle to have a peaceful agreement. We can admit to that. Because of all the authorities is by the president hands, it is opportunity for Israel to have an agreement with this person, historic leader in the Palestinian Authority, and he can pass any agreement with the Israeli government or the Israeli side. Because of that, I think it is opportunity, good opportunity for Israel to have an agreement now with the President Mahmoud Abbas, with at least a leader that have the legitimacy to pass any kind of agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. So the counter-argument there being that by holding the power and having the monopoly on power, actually it means you have the ability to deliver a deal. Gadi, Zohar, why don't you, if you can, address some of that very bleak assessment from Barak Ravid that there's no chance even of final status progress in the next 10 or 20 years because of the weakness and paralysis and sort of sticking to the status quo of both sides, as you consider this question about peace and security. And this is going to be our closing voice for this panel. So, Gadi, Zohar.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you very much for having me here. And we, the Council for Peace and Security, established in 1988, we put peace and security together. But when we are looking at the situation today, and not only today, it's for a few years, I think this issue is not issue of security, because we have a kind of a security paradox today. Israel is the most powerful power in the Middle East. We have Russia now, but we can handle Russia as well. We do not have any real threat, which is a conventional threat, and the non-conventional was stopped by the P+1 agreement for years, we believe. But at the same time, the Israelis do not feel secure, and they are worried. And they are worried about their personal security, not so much about the others. The others also looks frightening because the rules are changed. The rule changed. We do not have any military powers that are threatening us, but we have ISIS, we have Al-Qaeda, we have instability all around us. We are very worried about what's happening in Jordan, and it's very important that Jordan will continue and be a strong power in the Middle East, and we have a peace agreement with them. So the issue is not an issue directly on the security, because Israel can secure itself in whatever border it is going to be decided by the government, by any government or by any agreement. Whether it will be a 67 war lines or other lines that is going to be accepted. IDF forces can do it. The matter is a matter of leadership, vision, and decision, political decision by the end of the day on both parties, and this is what we are lacking, and this is what we do not have today, and it's very difficult to see how it's going to be changed on both sides, on the Israeli side as well on the Palestinian side. Because if once we have this leadership and we have the vision, all nitty-gritties of the security can be solved in a very short time, and it was mentioned by my friend here that there is a file of security agreement between us and the Palestinians that had to be amendment, of course, and to be changed according to what is happening today. But the issue is not an issue of a real security threat that Israel has once there is going to be a Palestinian state. The issue is how to go there and how to reach it and how to get a political decision and political decision makers that can do the difference. And this is what we do not have today.
Thank you. Just this question of how we, it came up with partly what Anat was saying about generals and the need to hear those voices, but also what Barak Ravid was saying about the power in the coalition of the settler parties, etc. How do you bring about the change? It's interesting to me always this focus on leaders, because in a democracy anyway, the leaders are there because the people keep voting for them. So how do you move the political the sort of electoral mood in the country, so that the public vote for people who are advocating the kinds of messages you and the previous four speakers were advocating? What has to shift in Israeli public opinion so that we can actually, they will start voting for people different from the people who are there now?
That's a big question, and we are working on this, and we are trying as others to do it. And my organization, for example, we are meeting with a lot of people, and we are meeting with a lot of sectors, trying to let them understand that the issue is not the issue of security as it is, and that the government is magnifying the security threat, then it is really there. And the other thing is a political issue. And one of the things, of course, is the evacuation from Gaza. We are paying the price for that. We are paying the price. The Israeli public opinion will not accept anything that they have to pay the price for withdrawal from the West Bank or for withdrawing the settlements after what happened in Gaza. Whether it was right or not, but this is the situation. So the only way to do it is by way of an agreement, and for that we need the political change, and the political change does look like very optimistic today. So this is why this is what we can do, this is what the civil society can do for that, and this is what us as generals, ex-generals, although we are not appreciated by Anat, but we will do what we have to do in order to persuade, because the security voice is very important in Israel. And for the public, yet they do want to hear what we are saying. And if you see now the tension, even the tension between the establishment, the government, and the military establishment existing in the military, including the chief of staffs and others. You see the tension between them. The military, ex-military, and the military are saying, hey, government, we should look for other solutions, not only by the way of war. We are powerful, but the government is not there to hear.
This will be the last point, but your point there about the precedent of Gaza withdrawal in 2005 and the response that led to, with more rockets coming in, has made many Israelis nervous, skeptical, cynical about peace. You say the solution to that would be an agreement. Wouldn't Israeli public opinion not trust an agreement? Because they would say, we know what happens. I know 2005 there was no agreement, but that has led there to be such fear and distrust that how would you even get that to be acceptable, palatable to an Israeli public?
It will be very difficult, no doubt. No doubt it's very difficult to persuade the public opinion and the Israelis on any kind of an agreement. Look, the last agreement that was signed was with the PLO, and then 20 years from now. The agreement then, it was the agreement with the Jordanians, and then afterwards we do not have any agreements with our neighbors anymore. And the whole situation around us is changing, so it will be very, very, very difficult to persuade it, unless the agreement is going to be very much security focused. It's needed, and that there are going to be some other forces that are going to be involved in it. And it was mentioned the Arab countries involved, yes, the international community that should be involved in it in order to persuade the Israeli public opinion.
And this is, Ashraf, your point was that the Arab Peace Initiative was still out there, an agreement with the whole Arab world rather than just with the Palestinians. And you also made the point, didn't you, that those agreements with Egypt and Jordan have held, yes, even in the current very unstable climate. We've run out of time. Obviously, we've opened up huge amounts of issues, but thanks to all of you, because of your discipline and focus, we have actually managed to bring things right back with time. I think that is now, where's Hannah, or do we throw over now to Hannah? Okay, so before we do that, why don't we, and all of you I'm sure are going to want to join me in thanking our tremendously clear and interesting panel. Thank you.